Well, namaste and happy Holi, everyone. I'm really stoked to be here because, when Varsha and Shruti asked me, and they actually asked Geetanjali to present. I was just here. I happened to be here last week, and they were like, um, we're trying to get people to understand Holi a little better, especially parents who have not experienced that growing up. And so would Geetanjali be interested? Geetanjali is my wife in presenting. And I was like, she's not here, but I can take the message. So I did take the message, and she said, why don't you do it? I was like, okay, sure. So I kind of like researching, Indology type things, and so this was just an excuse to indulge myself, really. So, bear with me as I go through what I have, and you can boo me off, this place anytime you want. But it was really fun because when I was growing up, you experience a certain side of Holi. It's not like formally taught to you in school that, this is the origin story and this is the spiritual significance and here's the different variations in the different states. We never went on like a field trip for Holi. It was like all over, right? I mean, it's like Holi and Diwali are the two biggies in Indian festivals. Diwali is all about the night and the lights that shine in the night, and you can't miss those. And of course, firecrackers too when I was growing up. And Holi is all about color, and it's spilling onto the streets, that day, or at least half of the day, before people say, okay, I think it's time to quit. So yeah, it was good for me to kind of get a sense of, what is that mythos and what is all of that. So I put together just a few slides, nothing wordy on them. I wasn't sure where we'd be presenting, but I figured it might just help the narrative, or at least me to stick to a certain script. So yeah, it's all about color, and my name is Shiva Mittal. I'm one of the fortunate parents here to experience this lovely school, and we've got two elementary school going kids that attend the classes. I can share these later, or you can see these later, because you probably won't be able to read anything, so I'll just read out, and plus they're not very wordy anyway, so I'll read out the important bits.
I was just curious, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a place called Chandigarh in North India. It's at the foothills of the Himalayas.
Okay.
That's where Krishi grew up.
Oh, what are the chances? High five! Or holy five, right? So, one of the themes of Holi is fire. So I was like, where does that come from? So, they have a couple of different, from my research at least, there are a couple of different aspects that relate to fire and Holi. So one is more of a legend type thing. There's some ancient Indian texts called the Puranas, and they mention a lot of different, it's like a mixture of history and mythology and legend and eras past that we think are legend, but maybe they were real, and maybe multiverses and whatnot. But one of the legends went that there was this demon king, and again, like in Indology, I've learned that you don't have to treat everything at surface value. There's always layers of meanings that are hidden beneath. And maybe it's my yoga training. I call it yoga, not yoga, because that's how it's pronounced in Sanskrit. But I tend to understand, so why was this so important, or why were they trying to spread this message? What was the deeper significance? So the fire deal is that there was this demon king called Hiranyakashipu. And forgive my pronunciation, I didn't pronounce that as much as I did some of the other pieces. But this dude was like this power crazy monster, right? Now, he didn't probably look like a monster, but he had all those monstrous desires inside him. And he basically said, I want to rule the world, and not the world, like the worlds, plural, because there's like 3 worlds or, multiple worlds depending on, which scripture or ancient text you pick up. So let's just take 3 for now. He's like, I want to learn, rule earth, I want to rule the heavens, and I want to rule hell, right? Just keep it simple. So he was like, but there's these like other gods that are in my way, and he targeted this one god in particular called Vishnu, who's like part of the Indian Trinity, and he said, I want to abolish his name from the books. So he prayed to another, part of the Trinity called Brahma, and who's supposedly the creator of the universe. And Vishnu's the preserver, and then Shiva's the destroyer. He kind of comes when, the excuse my French hits the fan. So he prayed to Brahma, and he got this boon to not technically be immortal, but pretty close. It was like, I can die neither on earth nor in sky, not during the day, not during night, not by a weapon, that is a projectile or a handheld weapon. And he tried to put together this duality that would basically, potentially, if none of that could happen, he would potentially live forever. So he's like, okay, I have the power, I'm gonna live forever, I'm gonna, kick Vishnu and his name out to oblivion. So that was his mission in life. Pretty cool mission, and probably would have lasted his whole life. But he had this wife who gave birth to a son called Prahlad. Now, as luck would have it, Prahlad was a devout of Vishnu. So now Hiranyakashipu was like, oh my gosh, I've got the worst enemy right in my family here, and he's like trying to coerce him and brainwash him, but Prahlad wouldn't listen. He was like, no, I'm just like into Vishnu, and he's like, the dude, you're my father, but he's something else. So what was he to do? After a point, he was like, okay, this dude, Prahlad's kind of getting in my way of my big life mission, and so I'm just gonna maybe take him out of the way. So now he resorts to more evil deeds. He's trying to throw him off cliffs, and he's trying to drown him, and things of that nature. But miraculously, Prahlad survives all of this, and so this guy, Hiranyakashipu is really like flustered at this point. So he calls on his sister called Holika, who is like a she-demon, and she apparently has this magic cloak or shawl that protects her from fire. So once she dons that and she goes into fire, nothing touches her, right? So she can come out of fire unscathed. So he says, hey, why don't you just take your cloak, put it on, and take this Prahlad, troublemaker son of mine, and sit in this Agni Kund, this holy fire, and you'll be fine, and he'll no longer be a problem. So, he was obviously a different kind of person. But not very good parenting skills, I'd say. And he obviously didn't go to SILC. So, Holika says, okay, I love my brother more than I love my nephew, so I'll do it for you. And so she takes Prahlad, and they sit in this fire, and soon enough the fire starts to roar. But as soon as the fire starts to roar, the cloak miraculously flies off of Holika and lands on Prahlad.
Oh.
Guess what happens? Right on. Full marks, right? So Holika goes and Prahlad survives. And so that's why that kind of story brings us to Holika Dahan, which is the first evening of Holi. So now Holi has, like all big traditions and things that span millennia. It has a whole different variety of celebrations depending on where in India you go to, who you speak to, what class of society is celebrating it and whatnot. Everyone has their own flavor of it, right? But this is probably what I found was the most popular incarnation of Holi. It's sort of a 2-day festival. So the first evening or night is the bonfire called Holika Dahan. And then the following day, like I said, up until about midday or let's say 2 p.m. India time, it's the festival of color, or what is technically known as Holi. So Holika Dahan is all about, remembering this legend and the significance of fire in our life. So I just had a prompt here which says, what needs to burn, perish, transform, cleanse, purify, change. So maybe that's sort of another layer of trying to understand what is the role of fire in our lives and what is fire as in a holy context. There's another little byline I put here which is Kam Dahan. Now that's a whole another legend again from the Puran, which is about the god Shiv and the god of love, Kamdev. But you can ask me later about that one, because otherwise that's all we be talking about. All the the Trinity, all of them need a piece of the action. So Vishnu's got something and Shiva needs something too. So keeps us all busy. So the next theme of Holi. Did anyone have any questions? I mean, I don't have to keep going through this. We can save questions at the end as well as in the intro.
So for children, Kamdev is Cupid. So Cupid, God Helper, is Kamdev.
Wait, so which one's Kamdev now?
Cupid.
No,
The
but.
one we didn't talk about.
The story I didn't cover.
So the one we kept under covers.
So theme 2 is color, and the biggest piece of color is related to Krishna. So I don't know if that's a coincidence or not, but Krishna Ji is also, Bhagavan Krishna is another Vishnu avatar. And what I didn't tell you in the first story about Holika is there's actually a Vishnu avatar involved there as well called Narsingh. But since that wasn't technically why Holi was named, I didn't speak too much about that. But you can feel free to ask me about that as well. So Krishna Ji was, I don't know if you know anything about him, but he was a naughty child. He was just like a troublemaker from the start. So when you heard about Prahlad, who was this very devout and probably really mature for his age type of kid, Krishna was like into everything that a kid should do and can do, and he got into all sorts of trouble because of it. But because he was an incarnation, a divine incarnation, he kind of scraped through most times, or all times. So as he got older, he started to get interested in playing around with the girls, and he had this certain, and the girls in where he was growing up were called gopis, and so he was interested in this specific gopi called Radha, and now Radha looked different from Krishna. Obviously, she was a girl, so girls and boys kind of look different. Would you agree? So Krishna was like, he goes to his mom and he says, Radha looks kind of different from me. Her skin's a different shade, and I'm kind of maybe more on the darker side of the spectrum, and she's kind of lighter. What's the deal with that? And that cannot she be like closer to how I look in some way? So his mom Yashoda apparently told him, hey, why don't you just take some color and throw some on her, and then she'll be closer to your shade. So apparently Krishnji said, okay, maybe that's what I'll do. And I think back in the day, there were no factories or industries of that nature. Everything was hand done. So you used to go out into the forest and maybe pick some flowers, and there was this specific tree, maybe called the Palash tree, which was more of a flaming red type of color. So they would make, they would dry the leaves and the pollen, the flowers, and they would kind of make a dry powder of that, and then they would smear that, so you didn't have any allergic reaction necessarily. Unlike the colors of today, which, in case anyone happens to play Holi, please be careful. Whoever is using, they're using, I don't know, FDA approved colors or something. Or, if they've gone through the trouble of doing the old fashioned way. But yeah, a lot of colors, at least when I was growing up, experiencing Holi, they actually had like shards of glass in them too. So when someone smeared it on your face, it was really kind of microscopic almost, but when it was smeared on your face, it did irritate you. And it was, all those chemicals to give it the color rather than, using beetroot juice or something like that, or rose petals, whatnot. So it was, it could get a little extreme. But back to Radha Krishan. So as Krishan was doing his what they call Leela, his dancing and frolicking and having fun with Radha, part of that was just playing, and that's where apparently the tradition of throwing colors started officially. And so Vrindavan, one of the places where Krishna frequented, is very well known, celebrated for its Holi tradition as well. I haven't been there, but after having reacquainted myself, I do feel I need to put it on my bucket list.
No, is Krishna blue?
He's depicted as blue, and again, it's not, like I said, when I was growing up, that's what I thought it was, but blue is actually also related to the color of infinity in some senses, and sort of more divinity, so it doesn't connote necessarily his skin color, but the energy he represented. So colors being a form of energy, as we know.
So he didn't want to make Radha blue necessarily.
Right. He just wanted to bring her closer to his shade, or I think he needed maybe some fixing somewhere. So there's another word I've written here, Lendi, which is another legend, which is like the previous fire theme. We can't just let one person hog all the limelight, so Krishnji can't necessarily be the only reason why we sprinkle colors. So maybe there's another legend there we can look at. So the prompt I just wrote here is, if life is a rainbow, what are its colors telling us, and which ones have we yet to enjoy? So it's, you can journal or do whatever with colors, make a painting, like you guys are doing an awesome job at, I think. It's all good. So the third and last theme is spring, and I think this everyone can identify with. I looked this one up, and it seems like spring is basically a celebration across all cultures, right? Any indigenous culture, if you kind of go back, you'll see they celebrate harvest season, you'll see they celebrate equinoxes, you'll see they celebrate full moon nights. So Holi kind of checks the box on all three of these, right? So it's no secret that Holi was also welcome as a spring celebration, and India kind of being in the, kind of this being more of a North Indian thing almost is what I think. Although spring is celebrated all throughout India, the Holi kind of version of it is kind of more predominant as you go up north. The seasons are similar to what we have here, so we do have, at least where I was growing up, we did have a winter. Not as severe as Minnesota. Minnesota takes the cake on the winter piece. But we did have a spring after, which was longer days, kind of, and the weather turning warmer, and of course the plants coming up and flowers coming through and all that good stuff. So Vasanti Navseshti, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is this Rig Vedic apparently, or at least Vedic if it's not the Rig Veda, it's somewhere in one of the Veds. There's 4. I haven't read all 4. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. It's one of the oldest scriptures we know, and it's not necessarily very easy to grasp if you don't have a good handle on Sanskrit. So I'll take my time with that. But anyway, this is the spring festival that dates back all the way back there, and so from that point onward, there's been some sort of a spring celebration, and somewhere along the line, the Holika Dahan, the fire piece, got woven in, and somewhere along the line, the color theme, the Radha Krishna Leela, got woven in, and so now you have this amalgamation of these 3 themes creating Holi, right? So spring is all about, kind of being grateful for this long, bleak winter being over, and the gods being happy, nature being happy, Mother Nature being happy about, okay, you're giving us another chance at a fresh start, a new beginning. Here's the bounty that comes with that. So again, here's the this is the fun part, and there's actually I've also written Holik over there. So Holik is a specific piece of gram or pulse that is traditionally burnt over the fire, roasted, and it's sort of similar. It's got this like physical metaphor to the Holika Kahani, to the Holika story, which is. Holika actually gets burnt, and in the process, Prahlad is saved, from being burned. So similarly, this pulse or gram has this outer layer which gets roasted, but the inner layer gets cooked and is ready to eat as a result. So in the story of Prahlad, he later goes on and actually stops that Vishnu avatar from like doing some crazy kind of destruction, because that was a real fearsome avatar of Vishnu, Narsingh, that I mentioned earlier. So this sort of kind of also brings that theme back in a way to say, sometimes you have to let go of certain things, or certain things need to burn for the new stuff to emerge or mature. So yeah, prompt here I wrote down was a time for new beginnings, fresh starts, and giving thanks. So the fun part that we all grew up with is the food, right? So here's a thali. I probably can't name more than half the dishes here, but I sure would love to try them. So one I just called out here is called gujia, which is, again, anything yummy has to be deep fried, right? We state fairgoers know that. So gujia is like deep fried, and it's of course spiced with Indian stuff. I don't know how to cook it. Maybe someone does here. But there you go.
It's like a pie, I would say. So you make a dough, you make a flattened roti out of a dough, and then you stuff it with paneer or mawa actually, which is condensed milk, dried condensed milk, a lot of dried fruits like almonds, cashews, and sugar of course, or jaggery, and you fold it into like a C. So equal to what's our Russian cheese filled pierogies. So a sweet pierogi, and then it is deep fried and then dipped in sugar syrup. Oh, it's yummy.
Oh.
Yeah.
And do you eat it hot? Is it or
No, you can dry it. So it's made ahead of time because it doesn't go bad for a week or two, and then it's distributed. So gujia is very good. Maybe you have to ask our SILC cooking teacher to,
Oh, yeah.
Maybe do it for
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
One thing, it's not 45 minutes class. Probably need like 3-4 hours.
Yeah, we get the prepared, things, and then we can just fold it and show it, and we have the molds where we put everything inside and just press it. Now we have the molds that we can do it, or we can do the old traditional handmade, and it's fun. Yeah, I make it, so maybe in one of the classes we can.
You have a volunteer.
If you go to the SILC Facebook page, some weeks ago, Aishwarya had posted a link for this particular sweet.
Oh.
It was a pie day, so she showed us
Oh.
the Indian pie, remember?
Oh.
So, and she posted a link. It's like a mini sweet calzone, very in a capsule, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
A mini sweet calzone. But anyway, carry on.
Oh boy, I'm glad I had breakfast. Otherwise, this would not be a good time to test my willpower. So yeah, I gotta keep the tummy happy, right? So you gotta have food. That's why I'm like, when people ask me, "Do you celebrate so and so festival?" I'm like, is there food? Is there celebration? Is there good times? Sign me up. Who cares about the rest, right? So drink, so it's there's a couple of very specific drinks that are famous at Holi. One is Thandai, which is like milk spiced with different like cardamoms and almonds and whatnot, and it's a cooling drink. But the one that Varsha had specifically asked me to include is Bhang, which is made from hemp or cannabis, and I believe it's made.
Sounds good to me.
Right? What else could be there? So yeah, it basically is made, I think, from the leaves or the less intoxicating part. But if you have too much of a good thing, what happens. So that's the holy high for you. Then there's pop culture. So like I said, it spills onto the streets. There's a lot of folk music traditions, very rich. The states of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, sort of that central North Indian kind of belt has a lot of traditions related to that. There's something called Braj Bhumi, sort of Christian's playground, where there's a lot of distinct musical influences that have arisen from there. And then of course Bollywood has to get a piece of the action too. So if you just want the Bollywood version of Holi, there's plenty of songs there. There's a playlist here that I had. You know, you can Zumba to a Holi playlist and burn whatever you have to off. Two birds with one stone. And then sort of making meaning, right? So I kind of, you know, being a yoga teacher, I can't help it. Kind of comes with the territory. So I have to like make a deeper meaning of things. So some of the prompts I wrote down after going through all of this was devotion, power corrupts, forgiveness, gratitude, letting go, eat, play, love. So no offense to, you know, include, clean, celebrate, new beginnings, joy, and, you know, add your own, of course. So yeah, that's it, and namaste again. Thanks for bearing with me. I think I didn't lose too many people or get hit with rotten eggs, so I think that's a good thing.
Shiva, question.
Yeah.
Share some of your own experiences and traditions growing up.
So yeah, my favorite part about Holi was when I was old enough to get into like almost adult trouble. So when I was a teenager, you know, I was probably like my sophomore year or something in high school. And so some of my friends, I was a biker all through, but bicycler, I mean. But some of my friends had motorized vehicles, so they would come and then I would maybe pillion ride with one of them and we'd kind of go around town. Spraying like people, unsuspecting people. We had this arsenal of water balloons that we'd throw at unsuspecting passersby. And basically in Holi, the rule is we're not doing this on purpose, it's all friendly, and you actually make friends too, you know. The best way to make friends is to fight with someone, right? That really makes for a close connection. Because you don't fight with random people, right? You fight with friends. So this kind of brings the fight first and then the friendship develops. So yeah, that was my favorite part, is just going around town, getting soaked silly, getting powdered, plastered, and then the worst part was probably the bath after, because it took forever, you know, with the colors we used at the time to scrub them off.
We know that.
I'm sure others have, you know, their own stories too. I know there's plenty of Indian parents here.
One of my worst and fun